What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Blogger Bowl playoff reaction, conference championship recap, bowl preview. We're going to kind of get everything into one big show here as a sort of season finale for us. I'm Matt. I'm not Matt. I'm Dan. That's Matt. And we
Close
appreciate
enough.
everyone joining us as always. So here's how we're going to do things today. We're going to recap the conference championship games by going through the seeding in the college football playoff. We will discuss the obviously controversial decision to omit Florida State and to put Alabama in the playoff. We will discuss the playoff games themselves, and then we'll kind of go through. We're not going to go through every bowl game. We're just going to kind of go. I have like one or two sentences written down about a bunch of games that I find interesting, and we'll kind of go through some of those and figure that out. But we will start with the number one seed in the college football playoff, the Michigan Wolverines defeating Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. I did not watch a single second of this game. I protest Iowa football. You know, I will not watch Iowa football. All I can say, Matt, thank God divisions are gone. I know you do. Thank God divisions are gone after this year. Michigan had a 3.33 yard per play, a negative 0.16 EPA per rush, which is obviously supposed to be the strength of their offense. And JJ McCarthy threw for under 150 yards. And the result of this game was never in doubt because they were playing Iowa. Did you watch this game? What were your thoughts? What were your takeaways?
I spent most of Saturday night flipping back and forth between this one and the Florida State game, which was equally almost as bad of a watch. It was not a good watch. It was
not a good.
This was a worse watch, but
Yeah.
on any other night, Florida State Louisville would have been the worst watch of the night, but this one was pretty bad. I don't know. Like I'm still not sold totally on Michigan. Like I just haven't seen their offense really completely and totally put it all together. The Ohio State win was nice, but they benefited from a call that was fine. I'm glad it went there. I'm not glad it went their way. That's fine. That happens. But other than that, like I still kind of haven't seen JJ McCarthy put a team on his back and win a football game. And I think against Alabama, that's probably something that Nick Saban's going to force them to do, because I would imagine he knows that's their weakness and he'll kind of force them into having to do that. And I'm just not totally sure he can do it yet. And I don't know, I kind of defy anybody to find a game against a high quality opponent that JJ McCarthy's really had to do that in his career at Michigan. I'm still not sure we've seen it. And I know that makes me sound like a hater of the team, but I'm really just trying to sound like a realist. Like there hasn't really been one game where that's been the JJ McCarthy game. Has there been games where he's made some throws when he's needed to? Absolutely. Both Ohio State games come to mind, but like the one game where they kind of needed him to do it was TCU, and he threw three interceptions and kind of turned the ball over and couldn't beat the TCU team that lost by 55 to Georgia. So I don't know. I'm still waiting to see it from him.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't think JJ McCarthy's good. Like I'm with.
That's not what I'm trying. Again, that's not what I'm trying to say.
I'm kind of with you, and I kind of want to save that for when we get to discussing the Alabama game, because it's just like I don't know.
Like they could have. Like I know Iowa's defense is good, but with the field position game that they played all night, like the only touchdown they scored in the first half was set up on that punt return. Like they couldn't really do much, and then towards the next one they scored was that really controversial fumble. Was his arm going forward call that Brian Ferentz absolutely lost his shit at. And like those were the first two touchdowns they scored, and that's kind of why the game got as far away as it did. Otherwise, it could have been 6-0, and we'd still be talking about what if Iowa can rip off one big play or piece of drive together, which is hilarious to think about.
It kind of feels like since we got into the tough part of the Michigan schedule, starting with the Penn State game, they've been trying to hide JJ McCarthy, and maybe it's less hiding him than leaning into their strengths, but they don't really seem like they want, it doesn't really seem like they want him to have to be the guy. And we'll find out coming up on January 1st, what's going to happen there. So we will save that discussion. Brian says McCarthy was good last year.
I want to put that comment up there because I think it's really fair. And Brian, like this is a fair comment. He made some big throws in Columbus, but I wouldn't necessarily say he went out and won them that football game. I think Ryan Day kind of lost it for them, and I think their running game absolutely beat them up. And if you want to play the he should have had a touchdown against TCU, then you probably could say he probably shouldn't have had that touchdown. I think it was Roman Wilson against Ohio State because that ball looked like it was coming out. So one call went his way, one call didn't. That's like, again, this is not me trying to be like, oh my God, I don't think he's a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And there's a fair point to say that Michigan's defense and run game has been good enough where we haven't had to see it. But that doesn't change the fact that we still have yet to see it. Like there
Yeah,
hasn't
I
been
mean,
the game where he's thrown the ball 35 times for 300 yards and had to put the team on his back. I'm not saying he doesn't have it in him. I'm just saying we haven't seen him have to do that yet.
Yeah, I think the last line, I'm going to put up the quote again for anybody watching, because I think the last line of what Brian said is kind of our point here is it's hard to be needed when the defense has kept a lead. And that's the absolute truth.
Yeah.
Their defense, and look, man, their defense has been awesome.
Very
there
much
is no
so.
denying that Michigan's defense is awesome. And when you can do that and you can run the ball well against the Big Ten, which I'm, again, kind of want to save this when we get into the combination of talking about them in Alabama, we just don't know. And that's kind of where I am. And we'll find out January 1st.
It's a fascinating game. We'll get to it.
The number 2 seed, the Washington Huskies, who, in my opinion, hand up, should be the number 1 seed.
I did this on accident, but I got my shirt on.
You have your Washington shirt on?
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. I know you get your Texas
because obviously Texas.
Dan, I'm when that game kicks off, I'm rooting for Texas. I just on accident, but also my Huskies. Me and Phil have been on them all year, so I'm
rooting for whoever wins that. Even if Texas loses, I'm rooting for whoever wins that game to win the national title. But nevertheless, Matt, it turns out when you tell a 12-0 team that they suck and are a 10-point underdog to a team they already beat, they're going to take that personally. Of course, they end up playing Texas after I've been saying this team is very scary if they get in and get healthy. Jalen McMillan looked healthy, and the big three of Odunze, McMillan, and Polk combined for 22 catches and 290 yards against Oregon. Dylan Johnson remains a revelation, running for 152 yards, and I thought the defensive line was awesome in this game. I thought they won the line of scrimmage battle handily on both sides of the ball in this game, which was surprising. Bucky Irving could not get going. Bo Nix did some things with his legs, but he was under 200 passing yards until that late touchdown to Trayshawn Holden. That was kind of a little bit fluky. Like, this was a 3-point game because every game Washington has played basically has been a 3-point game since the end of September, but it didn't feel like a 3-game.
It never really felt like they're out of control.
Game. It felt like, I mean, Oregon did come back and take the lead at one point in this game. They did. And that's a credit to Oregon and Dan Lanning and Bo Nix and everything that they've got going for them. But it never really felt like Oregon was the better team in this game. It felt to me watching this like Washington on both sides of the ball was just the better team against a very good Oregon team. And to me, with their resume, the quality of their conference, I think top to bottom, their schedule is better than what Michigan has faced. I think they should be the number 1 seed, but it doesn't really matter, I think, at the end of the day. And, they were super impressive.
Yeah, like you hit it on the head there. They controlled the line of scrimmage against Oregon, and that was something going into this game, and quite honestly, throughout the year, that we thought Oregon was going to have the advantage in. We thought that would kind of be where they would stand out among the rest within the Pac-12 if they were able to come out and win it. Washington's defensive line, like you said, I thought played fantastic, and that was also something I think in the preseason show we were even talking about, like, their ceiling defensively might be as high as anybody's in the Pac-12 of the contenders, because those guys have the potential to be really good. And I think we finally saw that in the Pac-12 championship game. Like, those guys started to live up to that, what they could be. And yeah, offensively, I mean, they started to click again. And that offense, I know they had the rough couple games after the first Oregon win, but like, we've started to see them get better as the year really came to a close. The Washington State game, they weren't great, but that's, rivalry games are weird. The Oregon State game, they played a good first half, but that was also in a rain-soaked game that's kind of hard to throw in. Like, when they've really had to dig deep and score points, they've been able to do that pretty much at will this year. USC, they put up the 52 when they had to. This game, they came back, put up, it was 34. Like, that offense is I'm kind of not really worried about it anymore. There was a little bit of a moment there after the first Oregon game where I was like, all right, are they TCU? They're not TCU. They're better than TCU.
The difference between a team like Washington and a team like Alabama and Georgia is when Alabama and Georgia have somebody suffer an injury, there's a 4 or 5 star player behind them. The depth is just going to be greater than a team like Washington is going to have. But I legitimately believe that their best 11 on offense and best 11 on defense, if healthy, can compete with and beat anybody on any given day. And they're starting to get healthy at the right time. Like, Jalen McMillan he's a game changer. He's a game changer for this offense. He was awesome against Oregon the other day. That's also going to allow Jalen Polk to not have to be the number 2, which, I mean, like I talked about, he had some drops in the previous couple of games. He had 5 catches in this game, had a big catch late in that game. Both of their safeties were out for a while. Those guys are back. Their offensive line's going to get healthy. Dylan Johnson's dealing with a foot injury, and he was still running people over in that game. He's now got a month to get healthy. So this team is very, very scary. And I'm not going to say, just don't believe that, if you have this preconceived notion of like soft Pac-12 team, don't. because that's not
No.
what this team is
No.
by any stretch of the imagination.
And it's also it's what you said was perfect there. I thought like Bama and Georgia have Ohio State like have to an extent the ability to survive injuries because they stack talent. Like Washington's of the world maybe don't. Same thing like next year when they lose some talent, they're probably going to take a little bit of a step back. But like this is a program who, when fully healthy, is capable of beating any team left in the playoff, any team in the country on any given Saturday when they're firing on all cylinders. And that offense is starting to get healthy, and they're starting to fire on all cylinders again. So we can use this to transition into the Texas game because I could not be more excited. Like the Alabama Michigan game feels like it could be like, an old school college football 24-21, like kind of who takes care of the ball best. And, I love watching those types of football games. Texas Washington feels like it could be 52-49, and this is just strike for strike back and forth. And that's not a knock on either defense. Texas defense is pretty good. With how good the offenses looked and the weapons that both teams have, and when the quarterbacks, how good they are when they're at their peak and playing well, that game can be so fun.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll dive deep into that game coming up. As you mentioned, the Longhorns, Texas is back, folks. The Longhorns.
What the fuck? What the hell? I don't think I've ever swore on this show either.
That was amazing. Oh man, I have to write down that time code so that I can go turn that into a GIF after the show.
Because Texas is back.
They are. The bugaboo about Texas, I've talked about it a lot, has been finishing drives. There we go. No thumbs up this time. All right. I talked about coming into the Big 12 championship game that Texas's struggles on offense have been finishing drives. They scored touchdowns on their first 5 quality possessions of this game, and that was all she wrote. They had almost 8 yards per play in this game. Quinn Ewers set every record in the Big 12 championship game, passing yards, passing touchdowns, all that. He set the I don't know if he completely passed the game record, but he came close to setting the record for passing yards in the Big 12 championship game in the first half. Like, that's what they did. And the thing, Matt, second lowest average depth of target of the season at 5.7 yards. The game plan was to get the ball out to your playmakers and make Oklahoma State tackle in space, and they just simply could not do it. In the interest of full disclosure, it was a pathetic effort from Oklahoma State on both sides of the ball. Texas's defensive line did what they do, and they stopped Ollie Gordon, which was very, very impressive. That Oklahoma State defense was just not up to the task, and they did not provide any pushback against Texas in this game. Though I will say, when you saw Washington struggle with a Washington State and an Alabama struggle with an Auburn, and Michigan looked a little shaky against Maryland, and then obviously the Ohio State game is always going to be a battle. Texas did finish the season with 2 impressive wins against maybe teams that aren't great. And I'm not going to say maybe. Texas Tech's not great. Oklahoma State's not great. But Texas put their foot on their throats. They elevated their play to another level when they had a pretty sloppy, mediocre early November, blew out Texas Tech, blew out Oklahoma State. They are going to the college football playoff for the first time with a chance to play for the national championship, first conference title since 2009. There were so many questions about Steve Sarkisian's ceiling as a head coach. He has answered every question about what he is going to be capable of at Texas. Looking ahead, first year in the SEC will probably be a bit of a step back because of some of the guys that they're going to lose, but this program is building for the future, and you just have to be impressed with what they have accomplished. They finally, if you listen to people before the season, it was like, there's no way Texas can blow it this year, right? Right? And then it turns out, no, they couldn't.
Texas, they felt similar, like not just this year, but like the last couple, when we're talking about how good they can be, like similar to the Clemsons of old before they got over the hump. Like, man, this team looks really good, but when are they going to Clemson? Like, at times it just felt like you were waiting, like, all right, when is Texas going to Texas? Like, when are they going to inexplicably lose to Iowa State, or are they going to lose the Big 12 championship game to a not very good Oklahoma State team? It was the opposite of what we've kind of grown accustomed. Not even not winning, but just like sometimes they just kind of play with their food and escape and, win a game that should be closer than that's closer than it should be. I was so impressed with them the last 2 weeks because, like you said, did they go up against the best opponents? No, but they did what really good teams should do towards the end of the season when they're playing their best football, when they need to be playing their best football. And like you said, put their foot on their throat, put their foot on the gas, and just blew them out of the water. Oklahoma State's not very good, but Ollie Gordon's a very good running back, and that's the one thing Oklahoma State has been able to do that's pretty much gotten them to where they are in the Big 12 championship game. Mm-hmm. And Texas just kind of said, oh, that's cute. Like, you can't run the ball on us. You're not going to run the ball on us, and they couldn't, and that game was over really before you could even blink. So I was, with especially the last couple of weeks, with chances for Texas to kind of do what they've gotten accustomed to do the last couple of years, for them to just completely flip the narrative and put their foot on the gas, like that was huge. And I could not be higher on them going into this playoff game. Like, man, I'm so excited for this one. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, we're going to do 1, 4, 2, 3. We'll talk about that. We're going to save that game for the second because we're also going to go chronologically. The 4 seed in the Alabama Crimson Tide. Before we talk about the committee's decision, completely indefensible decision, let's talk about the SEC championship first. Georgia's scripted drive was immaculate, and then from that point on, Alabama controlled this game. Georgia had a bit higher success rate in yards per play, but that's because they were in a negative game state for most of this game. Jalen Milroe was composed, never got flustered by the Georgia defense. The Alabama run game wasn't dominant, but they kept Georgia off balance, and it really just looks finally like losing 1 million defensive players to the NFL finally turned Georgia from otherworldly on defense to very good, but gettable for well-coached teams with a lot of talent on offense. This was the crescendo of the best coaching job of Nick Saban's career. The defense is good, but not Alabama dynasty good. The offense isn't as capable as some we've seen in recent years, but they coached their asses off to get this team in position to win this game, and the players delivered.
Yeah. When we watched that first drive, and it was kind of like, oh, this, like, Georgia's
might be a long day for Alabama.
Georgia's back. Like I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks, and like the Ole Miss game, I thought they looked great. It's like, okay, like I wasn't wrong. Like they're looking really good, and then they took their foot off the gas. And I think, Dan, credit to you. This is something I think you either called in the preseason show or early on in the season. The one thing that changed when they finally got over the Alabama hump was the offensive coordinator and Todd Monken, right? And now he's gone, and it's back to Mike Bobo, and it's back to, we're kind of scared of Alabama again. And that's kind of what it felt like. They went out, they got that first lead, and then it was like, okay, well, let's kind of just not lose this one because we're okay. We should be fine. Like they can't stop us. Like we should probably just play a little bit more conservative and not give them anything. When, I don't know, that's not how you beat Alabama. That's never been how you beat Alabama. You beat Alabama by punching them in the mouth and then kicking them while they're down and then punching them in the mouth again. Like once they're down, you have to keep them down. You can't give them room to breathe. Also, weird decision not to challenge that one catch right before the half that ended up.
Real quick, so it came out yesterday. The SEC said they reviewed it.
Okay.
So I don't understand what they saw.
That's fine. Yeah. They might have reviewed it, but if they reviewed it, they didn't review it long enough because Alabama knew that probably shouldn't have been a catch and ran up to the line and got the snap off quickly. So if they reviewed that, they did not nearly do it thoroughly enough. So they can say what they want, but that's not the case. I think the offensive coordinator change ended up kind of biting them. And I don't see Kirby Smart going and making another change there after 1 year with a guy that's kind of his buddy. But I think that clearly made a difference in here. And I think that's the one thing that you can look at that stands out. Like they had a better quarterback talent this year in Carson Beckett over Stetson Bennett. I know Brock Bowers was a little bit hampered. Maybe they tried to force feed him the ball a little bit too much for being hurt, but like he was still healthy enough to play. They have weapons all around. Ladd McConkey, I know, is a little bit banged up too, but still, like we were talking about earlier, you're still Georgia. You still have like Ladd McConkey's backup is still a 4-star, and Brock Bowers' backup is still you have 4- and 5-star talents around all over the field, and they just kind of seem to be hesitant to use anyone but Brock Bowers.
Well, to me, and I didn't take the notes that I usually take after, I didn't write down my notes like I usually do after these games, and I'm glad you brought it up. I don't really understand what Mike Bobo was like. He was trying to establish the fuck out of the run in this game. It was not working. It was run, pass for so many drives. They finished with a 35% success rate on early down run plays. But in the third quarter of this game, before Alabama was just like, fine, we're winning by a lot. If you want to run the ball on early downs, go for it. Like in the third quarter, Georgia was at 27% success rate on early down runs. They were just trying to run the ball early and putting themselves in bad situations so much. And Carson Beck is very good. But even with an offense as good as Georgia's, when you're playing behind the chains as much as they are, oh man, as much as they did in that game, it's just going to be hard to convert time and time again. I don't understand. I'm with you. Like you want to lean into Carson Beck, like the Georgia run game. Like I talked about it last week, their run game had been better in recent weeks, but their run game was not dynamic for the totality of the season. And I think their run game was probably better late in the season because people kind of realized that Georgia's passing offense was so good. And that opened things up. The run game. And they were running into a brick wall in
It's
that game.
okay to use the pass, and
Yeah.
especially in college football, it's okay to use the passing game to open up the run. I know
Yeah.
ideally in football you want to run the ball, so it opens up the field for you to throw. But if that's not working, it's okay to try the other one, the flip side of that, especially when you have a quarterback, Carson Beck, who's a very good talent. When you have the weapons that Georgia has, if the run game's not working, it's college football. You don't need to just sit there and hammer it home and be stubborn about it. And that's kind of what Georgia seemed to do.
So we end up with the scenario. We get to Sunday. Obviously Michigan and Washington were in. We knew that was going to be the case. And to me, it was as simple as 3 Power 5 conference champions who were undefeated, and Texas and Alabama both had 1 loss, and Texas beat Alabama 1, 2, 3, 4, boom. But the committee did the thing that they have never done before, which was omit an undefeated.
And we'll never see it again.
Well, there's that too. An undefeated Power 5 conference champion. Florida State gets left out in lieu of Alabama. I've got a lot of thoughts. I don't know how long I'm going to rant for on this. I will cede the floor to you to get us started on this conversation. Your thoughts, because I think it's I understand that when we get to January 1st, we are going to be very, very excited about these games, and more excited about these games than we would be if Florida State was playing in it. But I guess that's kind of be my overarching thesis. That can't be why you make the matchups that you make.
I get it. And I know we've talked about that. We were DMing about it with you, me, and Phil. And I feel awful for Florida State. And I think with a healthy Jordan Travis, I still think they're a fantastic football team. And I think they're a playoff team, no doubt about it. But Jordan Travis isn't healthy. Jordan Travis isn't walking through that door. They have 1 game of samples. I don't count the North Alabama game as a real much of a Tate Rodemaker sample size because they played North Alabama. Right. You have 1 real sample size of a Tate Rodemaker game, and they played Florida and looked okay, and they didn't do too much offensively, and they came away with a win. That's the one he got hurt on. I forgot exactly. I think it was later that he got hurt with that concussion. But
he got hurt late. He got hurt on the.
It was early 4th quarter.
No, it was late in the game.
Okay. Yep. He was running.
It was the run play where he got drilled, and they committed the personal foul when he slid and got hit late, because in that moment, I think I talked about it last week, rooting for Florida, because at the time I thought Texas needed Florida State to lose. Yeah. Like when he took off and ran, it was like, oh God, he's going to get hit late.
It was no doubt about, everybody could see it coming when he moved up to the right.
Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
I also don't mean to make laugh at Tate Rodemaker having a concussion, because I think he's healthy now, so that's good. They have the committee has the wrinkle, whatever, in their protocol, the criteria is the word I was looking for, that injury and coach unavailability does factor in and can factor in when needed. And I think there is no doubt and I'm not a big fan of let Vegas decide the lines. I don't think that. I think there has to be some sort of combination of everything. And I think that's why you have the committee. I think they have to look at everything that goes in, all the factors included. And I just don't think that in this college football playoff, Florida State is a better option or a better team than Alabama. Are they more deserving? Yeah, probably they are. But also this iteration of this team is not 13-0. This team is 2-0. They're 2-0 without Jordan Travis, and they're 2-0. And I'm not going to be one of the people that faults them for too much for going out. I know Florida's not very good. They're not going to a bowl. They went out in a rivalry game on the road and won a tough game. That's the same reason why I'm not faulting Alabama too much for the Auburn game. I know Brian has a comment there. I'm not going to fault them too much, because rivalry games, especially on the road, are just weird games. And sometimes winning those is just more important than style points, whatever. I just think in my mind, there's no doubt about it who the better football team is. I think Michigan's reaction to seeing who they're playing told a lot of the story. I think if you ask Brian in the comments who he'd rather play right now, would tell all the story. And I know that shouldn't be the only factor. And if Jordan Travis is going to be healthy and going to be back, I'd be all in. It would be a travesty if Florida State's not in. I feel terrible for them, but I just don't see them as the better option or the better football team right now in this moment than Alabama is.
The problem is the definition of trying to determine who the better football team is a literally impossible task.
That's fair.
These teams do not play the same schedules. These teams do not play the same level of competition week in, week out. The schedules aren't built the same. They don't have the same schedule sequencing. You cannot determine who the better team is than in any situation unless they play on the field. All you can do is make a decision based on what has happened on the field. And the playoff committee set a dangerous precedent when they told ESPN, quote, and this is one committee member telling Heather Dinich from ESPN, we talked about it over and over, and we just kept coming back to, are they good enough with what they have to win a national championship? And it just kept coming back to, we didn't think they could. So now we are determining who is going to play in the playoff based on what a committee of people think rather than what happened on the field. And the other thing that really irks me about this, Matt, is the one thing about college football that has made it better than every other sport on the planet is the regular season has mattered way, 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 way more than it has in other sports. And the committee just completely neutered that because they made a decision for what they felt was going to be better for 3 potential games than the totality of the entire college football season. I don't care that Jordan Travis was hurt. That team won every game on their schedule. And people want to say Tate Rodemaker they didn't play well against Florida with Tate Rodemaker at quarterback. They won that game by more points than Alabama beat Auburn by on the same day. 2 teams, Auburn and Florida, not a ton between them. Rivalry games, hostile environments, pretty similar circumstances in terms of who you're playing, where you're playing them, what's at stake. And Florida State still won by more, played a better game as an entire team than Alabama did against Auburn. Florida State, I understand their strength of schedule was 55th. They went out, they played LSU in the season opener. Oh, by the way, beat LSU by more points than Alabama did. And Jaden Daniels.
I was going to say Jordan Travis.
Jaden Daniels did not leave that game with an injury the way he did against Alabama. Florida State, I know their strength of schedule wasn't good, but one of the metrics that the playoff committee comes back to is strength of record, which reflects the chance that an average top 25 team would have the team's record or better given the schedule. Washington was 1, Michigan was 2, Florida State was 3, Alabama was 4, Texas was 5. Strength of schedule tells you who they played. Strength of record tells you how they played against that schedule. So even though Florida State's schedule wasn't as good as Alabama's, they still did better with their schedule. They still had a higher strength of record than Alabama did, which is to say Alabama did nothing on the field this year to say they are definitively better than Florida State. I understand this idea of like, okay, there's extenuating circumstances and things like that. They did not they were not great against Arkansas. They nearly lost. They were terrible against UCF. They got their asses handed to them on their home field in the 4th quarter against Texas. I know Texas is going to be in the playoff. Texas earned their way in. Alabama played a team that is in the playoff and got beat by them, whereas Florida State did not lose at all. And to say that they wouldn't get there because Jordan Travis was injured is a just complete slap in the face to everyone else who plays on that team. That defense is awesome. Louisville's offense was really good this year, and Florida State completely shut them down. And I know, Brian, this is going to piss Brian off. I'm sorry, Brian. I also don't understand why we're treating Michigan with the reverence of them being like 2021 Georgia. Michigan's a fine football team. There's no denying that. But with a month to get Tate Rodemaker ready, you're telling me with the quality of defense that Florida State has and the Keon Coleman's, Johnny Wilson's, Jaheim Bell, all of those guys, with a month to prepare Tate Rodemaker, they couldn't at least keep that game competitive with Michigan. That game kind of feels like a 21-17, 21-14 slugfest. I don't think Florida State would win that game, but I'm not sitting here telling you that I think Michigan is this unbelievable team. So, like, to me, it just sends a bad message. It sets a bad precedent. And also, it's cowardice because you're telling me we're trying to find the 4 best teams and Georgia's not one of the 4 best teams. Like, it's like this half measure bullshit is also kind of flummoxing to me.
Well, that's why they throw as many criteria into that than their selection. So and I see, I'm not saying it's a invalid argument because it's very valid, but I see so many people being like, well, why is this year this is more important and the next year that's more important? Well, it's because that's why the committee has it in there. So they can kind of shoehorn the teams that they want that they think are best in there and use certain criteria as, the overarching reason why certain teams get in every year. And I cannot sit here and argue really against how deserving Florida State is of to get into the college football playoff. I just understand the Alabama move. I understand winning the SEC and beating Georgia. I get why they did it, and I feel awful for Florida State, but selfishly as a college football fan, I think this makes for the best playoff we could have got for teams that were deserving.
There's no denying that Alabama against Michigan is a more compelling game right now than Florida State, Michigan. Did I say Alabama, Michigan? Or is that Alabama, Florida State?
I think you said Alabama, Florida State.
Let me back up. Alabama, Michigan, to me, there's no denying, is a more compelling game than Florida State versus Michigan. I totally understand that. But we can't be making these decisions based on what is going to be good for TV ratings and what is going to be good for ESPN's bottom line because they get what they want. Also, RIP the ACC, because this is just gonna hasten Florida State's exit. And now, for those of you who really hate money and how money gets involved in college football, congratulations! Now JP Morgan and all these other private equity firms are now going to have their talons in college football, because that's the only way Florida State's going to be able to get out of the ACC because of the grant of rights and how much money they're going to owe the ACC. There's like another 13 years left on their deal, so we've killed another conference. We're in the Big Two era. And I'll throw out a question. I put this on, maybe you saw it on the BetSports Twitter. I'll see if you saw the thing I tweeted the other day. Of the top 13 teams in the final college football playoff rankings, Florida State is the only one who's not going to be in the SEC or the Big Ten next year. Do you know who the second highest ranked team in the final college football playoff rankings is, who's not going to be in the SEC or Big Ten next year?
Notre Dame.
No.
Aren't they 16?
They might be, but there's a team that's 14. I kind of gave it away that number 14 is the team that's not going to be in the SEC.
It was 14.
Bear down Arizona Wildcats.
Good for them.
Yeah. How about that?
We should just put Arizona in the playoff.
There you go. Put Arizona. Louisville was, Brian, until they lost, and then Louisville fell down a bit. It's Arizona, which is, Brian, aren't you online class, and don't you have a degree from Arizona, aren't you? Or are you just, I don't know what the deal is. I know there's some connection between Brian and Arizona. So nevertheless, to me, man, it's just a sad situation when we're making decisions based on what ESPN wants rather than.
Do you think they make this decision if it wasn't the last year of the 14 playoff?
That's the other thing, man, is like, it's such like cowardice.
I saw that in a comment, and I've seen people talking about that. I think that's also something fair to bring up.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's the other part of the cowardice of this. It's like, well, next year, Florida State, you'd be in, so deal with it. Watch the 12-team playoff on ESPN. Like, dude, no. Like, Florida State should be in. Nevertheless,
had an emergency 16 playoff this year.
Dude, it should be malleable. We should be able to like add.
That would be like that would have been awesome. Like the ability to add one extra play in game.
Yeah, like do Michigan, just do like Florida State 1, or not Florida State 1. Sorry, do Michigan 1, Washington 2, give them buys. Number 3, Florida State, because they're undefeated. They play number 6, Ohio State. And then number 4, Texas against number 5, Alabama.
I've always thought the 16 playoff is the best. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to watch the heck out of the 12-team playoff. I'm going to love every second of it. I've always thought the 16 playoff is just kind of going the NFL-ish model. But like first 2 team gets buys. First round games are 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, played on campus, which gives you the on-campus home game. And then, boom, you got your Final Four. Top 2 seeds have buys. You play in your bowl games.
So Brian says the playoffs should just be all Power 5 conference champs, the best group of 5 conference champ, 2 wild cards. I'm actually going to take it a step further, Brian, as long as the players get paid for it, which they don't as of now. But if the players get paid, I'm for every conference being represented and having as many, however, like now there's going to be 9 because I guess 9 conferences because the Mountain West Pac-2 are forming a partnership. Let everyone in, because if you want to make games matter more, like, yes, the MAC champion is going to be the 16 seed and they're going to lose to Michigan, but like, at least they get in. At least they get the memory of a lifetime to get to go play in the playoff. Now, maybe the MAC and Michigan's not the best comparison because they play MAC teams, but like, so number 2, the second worst team would be, well, I mean, Liberty was the best. So we're going to probably say Sun Belt champ, which is Troy. Troy would get to go to Seattle. When are those Troy players ever going to get to go play Washington and Seattle? Like, that would be awesome. And maybe they'd lose and like whatever, but they'd have that experience. Nevertheless, We get to
at some point they're going to keep it like the 12-team playoff's going to be a hit, and that's going to be a thing for a while. But like,
Yeah.
it'll probably get expanded again at some point. Who knows?
Mickey says it'll be the same next year moving forward. The only difference, they'll be clamoring over the 11 seed instead of the 4. I don't think we're going to be talking a ton
Yeah,
about Penn State or Ole Miss who gets left out of the playoff. Like, it'll be funny.
That'll be more subjective,
actually,
but like, no one's going to be nearly as up in arms about which 3-loss team is getting in as opposed to the Florida State Alabama debate. Like, that's just will fan bases be upset? Absolutely, but like, I don't see that being is the talking point that's been literally the top story, I think, in like every sports show in the country for the last 3 weeks is, oh, did you see Missouri got in over Penn State at 9-3? Are you kidding me? Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Although I will say, if like the last spot came down to Penn State and Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin and James Franklin politicking against each other would be pretty entertaining.
Put them in a wrestling match.
But because it's like Ole Miss Penn State's a game that I'll watch, I'll be fine, whatever. I don't really want to talk about that game. But before we get to talk about the playoff games in particular, did you see the Lane Kiffin Chop Robinson thing?
I thought you just tweeted at Chop Robinson.
Yeah,
so
like, Chop Robinson.
Good luck.
Yeah. So Ole Miss playing Penn State in bowl game. I don't care which one it is, whatever, one of the bowl games. Chop Robinson, Penn State star pass rusher, opted out, going to the NFL. Lane Kiffin quote tweeted it and said, "Good luck. You're going to have a great career." Pretty awesome. All right. So Matt, we get the Rose Bowl. God, why did Georgia fuck this up and we don't get Michigan and Washington in the Rose Bowl? Nevertheless, Georgia did fuck it up. We get Michigan and Alabama in the Rose Bowl, January 1st.
This is still pretty cool too.
Oh,
even
it's
though we
awesome.
don't get the rematch.
It's
This
awesome.
is
It's
awesome.
just like the Pac-12 Big Ten thing is, the last one would have been kind of neat. But nevertheless, particularly because they're going to be in the same conference next year. Anyway, your thought, and it's two Big Ten teams. It's technically Big Ten versus SEC in both playoff games. Nevertheless, your early thoughts on Michigan and Alabama.
I think it's going to come down to Alabama's offensive line versus Michigan's defensive line. And Alabama's offensive line is something we've talked about this year is not being their strength, which is pretty abnormal for Nick Saban's tenure at Alabama. But we know how good Michigan is up front. We know how good their defense is. Alabama's offensive line has been getting better as the season has gone on. I still wouldn't say they're great. They're spectacular, but like they started out terrible. They've been getting better as they've been playing more football games. It sounds kind of cliche, but this game is the trenches. Can Alabama's offensive line play their best game and then hold up against Michigan's front seven? Can Michigan's offensive line, without their best player and Zach Zinter, hold up against an Alabama front seven that's been really good in an Alabama defense that's been playing a lot better football as of late too? Which quarterback that we both think are good, but like still have questions about, like which quarterback's going to be the one to blink first? There's a lot of toss-up factors, but I think it all just starts in the trenches on both sides.
So for me, the thing I'm most interested to see is Michigan playing a good quarterback. Michigan has played one quarterback this year, Matt, who ranks in the top 50 in college football in EPA per play. And that was Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord, who
future Nebraska quarterback, Kyle McCord.
Kyle McCord is so good that Ohio State said, "Hey, buddy, we're going to go get a quarterback in the portal. You might want to go somewhere else."
It was funny to see on Twitter, like after that game and during and before, Michigan fans trashing Kyle McCord for being a bad quarterback, and then the second he leaves Ohio State, they start trashing Ohio State. Look, you ran off your good quarterback. You should have kept him. I love transfer portal Twitter. Oh, it's fantastic.
They were able to get enough out of Kyle McCord to win almost all of their games, but they very clearly did not trust him that much. Now, going forward, if they get through Alabama, Washington, Texas, same thing. They are not going to play teams who are afraid of their quarterbacks. They're going to play a team in Alabama and a team in Washington or Texas, if they win, who are not afraid, who have very capable quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think is the most fun element in all of this, Matt, is, when Alabama made the offensive coordinator hire, people were like, really? I don't know if that's a good hire. I don't know how good of a coordinator he is. And to his credit, Tommy Rees has done a phenomenal job with that offense, really playing to Jalen Milroe's strengths, really figuring out what they do well. Jalen Milroe, again, limited in some of the intermediate passing stuff. The offensive line, been better pass blocking the last few weeks, but still a group that has struggled throughout the course of the season. You can argue they've gotten better the last few weeks, and that's positive. The receiving group has come on, but again, maybe not as explosive as we're used to seeing from Alabama. Again, Alabama has a high bar established for all of those positions, and these guys are trying to get there, but they're not quite there. And Tommy Rees has done a phenomenal job with it, and you just have to love that the offensive coordinator who is tasked with trying to take down one of the best offenses or best defenses in all of college football in the Michigan Wolverines is a former Notre Dame Fighting Irish quarterback who played Michigan in the days before the schools were bickering and didn't want to play each other. I think he played in 4 or 5 Notre Dame Michigan games. I think he only threw 2 passes, one of them. I think he played 4 times, started 3 of them.
I was at the game. He came in relief for Everett Golson, and I think it was like 13-6 or something. It was the lowest scoring Notre Dame Michigan game we've ever seen. But yeah, they ended up winning that game. It is kind of ironic that Michigan is going up against Michigan State's former head coach and Notre Dame's former quarterback and offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think the head coach's connection to Michigan State maybe a little
bit looser, but still, you check out Michigan State. You check out Michigan State Twitter right now. They'll be telling you they're full on Nick Saban guys, and Nick Saban hates Michigan more than anybody.
Yeah,
they're trying to claim Saban, which is funny.
You talked about it earlier. Like, you would expect that Nick Saban's game plan is going to be, we're going to have to stop the run. Alabama's run defense has been good, not great. Again, we talk Alabama levels. Their pass defense has been very good. Their run defense, good, not like the dominant Alabama run defense. So they're going to have their hands full there. But you talk about the athleticism and the physicality of Alabama football and what Michigan is used to. They're stepping up in weight class here in terms of the competition they're playing. The last thing I'll say about this game in particular, Matt, I do think there's going to be this element of the Michigan versus everybody thing, which is eye rolling, but we're going to get to this game, and Michigan's a 1.5 point favorite the last time I checked. I would not be surprised if this is a pick 'em by the time we get to game day.
I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if Bama was a
slight favorite at that Michigan's point. Going to say, what the fuck? We're the 1 seed. We've won every game we played. Why does nobody believe in us? But look, man, this is a put up or shut up kind of moment for Harbaugh too. They got embarrassed by Georgia 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. The game was close last year, but the transitive property, losing to a TCU team that lost by 1 million points in the national championship game. This is a big, big moment for them to go prove that this is a team that they are at that elite level. They've been very, very good. They've been in the second tier of college football. This is the opportunity for Michigan to prove they are in that elite tier, that they belong in that conversation with Georgia the last couple of years, and Alabama as a program. Cannot wait to watch this game.
Yeah, and I mean, you were talking about how they haven't really faced a a very good quarterback yet. They haven't really had to play from behind either. I'm not saying they're going to play from behind in this game, because maybe they get the ball first, maybe they score, maybe they control the game that way. But if Alabama gets up 14-3 and you kind of can't play that, we're going to anaconda vice grip you and we're just going to run the ball down your throat, control the clock. You can't do that, and you have to start, changing around the game plan. I'm interested to see how Michigan looks in that spot, because I think they do have playmakers on offense. I think J.J. McCarthy can throw the football, despite not having seen him really go out and win that type of game yet. Like, obviously, there's talent there. We haven't seen this Michigan team play from behind since the TCU game. And really before that, kind of since the Georgia game a couple of years before that. So this is a program, for as good as they've been, with kind of how down the Big Ten has been at times, like with the exception of a couple games a year, haven't really had to play from behind all that often. And going into a Rose Bowl against the Nick Saban coached Alabama, there's a pretty decent chance that they're going to have to play a little bit from behind at some point. And I'm interested to see if they're, hey, we're going to stay the course. Hey, we kind of can't stay the course. What are we going to do? What does the offense look like then? A lot of fascinating questions to be answered, really, on both sides here. But I think more so from Michigan, just because I think Alabama is a little bit more battle tested this year.
Yeah, I think the one time last year Ohio State had a chance to knock Michigan out early in that game and couldn't do it, and that was impressive. But again, I don't think Alabama's going to be I don't think they're going to go in afraid. I don't think you're going to see Alabama timid.
No, Alabama's not. I mean, they went into Atlanta and played Georgia and did not care. They're not afraid of anybody.
All right. The other game, the Sugar Bowl, New Orleans. Tough draw for the 2 seed to have to come from Seattle to play in New Orleans in a state that borders Texas. So probably be a heavy Longhorn crowd. And by the way, like, one thing that gives me optimism as a Texas fan, New Orleans, not far from Austin. You know what's even closer to Austin than New Orleans, Matt? Houston, which is where the national championship game is. So Texas will be the home team in terms of crowd in both games if they can get there. This game is going to be awesome. I've obviously, as a Texas fan, I've got a lot of thoughts, so I will see the floor to you again. Texas, Washington, what are your expectations as we're a month out from that game?
Dan, I'm going to pretty much reseed my time just back to you for the most part, because this is your game. This is your spectacle. I've talked about, for the most part, what I expect to see from this game. I don't see just fireworks. I think this game is going to be awesome. I think you see both offenses clicking on all cylinders. I think Texas is the better football team. I think they probably do come out on top and win this game in an absolute shootout, but it's probably just going to come down to which offense blinks first. And that's nothing against either defense. I think both defenses are solid. Texas defense has been solid. Washington's has been better as the year's gone on. But these offenses just have so much firepower. No matter where you look, both quarterbacks coming off their best games of the year. I want to see fireworks in this game. And I really think we could see it like 49-45, 52-49. Like, I think we really got a chance to see something like that. And I will be taking the over just about no matter what it's at.
So I will say these teams played in the Alamo Bowl last year. Washington won 27-20. It was not that close. Washington was
Desmond Howard, by the way, I saw on ESPN, speaking of that, was talking about how he's excited for the Texas-Washington matchup because you never see them play, and they haven't played each other in a while. It's like,
yeah, they played in the Alamo Bowl.
Played in the Alamo Bowl last year. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, Texas, to let you know how seriously they took that game. So Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson both opted out, and Texas gave Keelan Robinson,
love Roschon,
the fourth best running back on the roster. They're the bulk of the carries, and he's a smaller change of pace receiving back, and they were trying to run him between the tackles. They did not really take that game all that seriously, I don't think. And Washington just kind of beat them up in that game. I don't think you're going to see a lot there. So that's going to address that. The weakness, so Washington's strength on offense really plays into the weakness of the Texas defense, which is the big concern, which is Texas's secondary is not great. Texas secondary has some talent. We'll see Ryan Watts, one of their starting corners. He's been dealing with a ton of injuries. He's dealing with a back injury, which is kind of concerning. He did not play, or he only played a little bit in the Big 12 title game. Malik Muhammad, the freshman cornerback, has come on a lot. He's been really, really good. So there's some quality there, some inexperience. Safety depth is going to be a concern. Jalen Catalon entered the transfer portal. He did the Jalen Catalon thing, which was he played well, then he got hurt and just hasn't been able to get back on the field.
Yeah.
And then Derek Williams, their freshman safety, Matt, got a targeting on the opening kickoff of
such
the second
tough timing.
half
That was such tough timing
when Texas was receiving the ball.
I saw, and it was the right call.
No, it was. So he's going to sit out the first half. So their safety depth's a little problematic. I've talked about the Odunze, McMillan, Polk trio. That group can give Texas a lot of trouble in this game. The key for Texas is going to be what the key has been for them all season long, and it's can their defensive line continue to win games for them on that side of the ball. Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat, the best defensive tackle tandem in college football. That is almost 700 pound of man. Both now have receiving touchdowns this year, by the way. Maybe the highlight of championship weekend was 360 pound Tavondre Sweat catching a touchdown
that was awesome.
And then hitting the Heisman pose. But that group those two guys have been awesome all season long. Texas's rush ends, Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrell, are good, not great players. Sorrell's the better of the two. But Texas has really been able to dominate games up the middle. So the middle of the Washington offensive line, how they handle that, their guards and their center, how they handle the pressure from Texas up the middle is going to be key. Because I love Michael Penix Jr. I think he is an amazing player. I think the one thing about watching him play that scares the crap out of me objectively, like from the negative standpoint, is how much he throws off of his back foot. He can make some absolutely incredible throws off his back foot. We're talking like maybe not Aaron Rodgers level, but like that good at like.
That's what it looks like.
Throwing off his back foot and throwing a better throw than like 95% of college quarterbacks can make. But throwing off your back foot is risky. And the one strength of the Texas pass defense has been turnovers. They have, I think, 16 interceptions in 13 games. So, and I think interceptions are sticky, whereas fumbles are not. So Michael Penix will throw the odd-timed interception, and I think that's going to be a key. Can Texas force those interceptions? Can they also make Washington one-dimensional? If they can stop Dylan Johnson, at least I think that gives them a chance, because if Washington keeps them off balance the whole game, I don't know how Texas is going to generate stops. They're going to have to make this a one-dimensional Washington offense and then try to force Michael Penix into the mistakes. On the other side of the ball, Washington's defensive line played really well against Texas in the bowl game. The Texas offensive line was a lot better. Can Texas protect Quinn Ewers? Because the one thing about Quinn Ewers is he is not mobile at all. If you get pressure on him, you're going to get him on the ground. He did have one scramble against Oklahoma State, which was kind of interesting because I think they've been trying to protect him since he came back from injury and telling him just to go down if there's pressure. He's not a mobile quarterback, but I can't remember who the other quarterback they were talking about in a college game recently, but the one thing they said, this guy's not mobile, but the thing he does is he can just get the first down. If he needs to get a first down with his legs, he can take off and run and get the 5-6 yard gain. That kind of stuff is going to be very, very valuable for Quinn Ewers in this game. Injury is a concern for Texas. Xavier Worthy injured his ankle in the Big 12 title game. There was no structural damage, so he should be okay. I think it was a sprain. CJ Baxter's been dealing with injuries. Another month for him to get healthy should help. Hopefully this Texas offensive line holds up and plays well and we get the game that we want to see. I have no idea what to expect. I do think it could be a 27-20 kind of game like it was last year. I do think it could be a 42-35. I don't think we're going to see both teams in the 50s. In this game. I do think the defenses are good enough to get a couple of stops here and there, but this does feel like the one turnover, the one red zone stop in this game, which again, just because Texas did well against Oklahoma State in that regard doesn't mean they're going to do well against
two very different offenses.
Two very different defenses as well. And I think Washington's defense is better. Can Texas finish drives? That's going to be the key. They have to get 6s instead of 3s. 6s instead of 3s are going to be the key for Texas to stay in this game, because if they can't stop Washington on the ground in this game, and Washington's just going to move the ball on them, and Texas is going to be in trouble. I like Texas being a favorite. Like I would definitely sprinkle money line on both dogs here with Alabama as a dog. I don't think there's enough between these teams to say I'm definitively think that Michigan's going to win, and definitely don't think Texas is definitively going to be better than Washington. I'm just hoping for great games. I'm hoping it's competitive. Obviously, my rooting interests are what they are. Hope Texas wins. I'm optimistic that Texas, and I will say this, another thing I will say about the committee, as much as I disagree with the decisions and the process, I do think any of these 4 teams can win the national championship, which is all you really want when you get to the playoff. I know, again, process sucked. I know. I just sat here and bashed it. I will say, I do think all 4 teams can win the national championship.
Agreed. I can't talk about Texas football more than you can.
So we move on. I just wrote down, like, again, I have bowl games. This is kind of like games I'm interested in, vibes, good, bad, all those kinds of things. Well, yes. I mean, but in general, ones that stand out more than others. So I'll kind of rip through these, and then Matt, you kind of add on to where you think the other games that you're interested in. I'm going to just give I wrote them down chronologically. Start with the LA Bowl, which is December 16th, UCLA, Boise State. Boise State pulled it off. They fired their coach, won their conference, gave the interim guy the full-time head coaching job. I don't know if you saw that video, but that was awesome. So vibes immaculate for Boise State. Not really sure what to expect from UCLA. Dante Moore in the portal. They might have packed it in. They got blown out by Cal. Beating USC might have been like we're done with this. We did what we came to.
Yeah, I think that was their season.
We beat USC. We're out. So I like Boise State a lot there. Also, 2 things before we start. Betting bowl games. 1, betting bowl games. Do not jump feet first into this. Give it some time. You can bet these a few days out. You have to wait to see what the opt-out situations look like. There will still be decisions made. Do not make decisions based on the matchups out of the gate. We're past that at this point. We're starting to, some of that info starting to trickle in, but that stuff will come in, and that's when you should bet bowl games. Don't just be like, oh, I like this. I'm just talking about vibes. I'm not betting any of these yet. These are just things I'm interested in. And then number 2, Matt, maybe the most important thing, and this is the most important thing to remember during bowl season, Matt. If an SEC team beats a team from another conference, it is because the SEC is the best conference in football by far. If the SEC team loses their bowl game, it's because they didn't care about it and they didn't want to win that game. Moving on.
Dan, you're in the SEC now. You're supposed to
not yet. One more year.
You're supposed to not say that.
All right. The Frisco Bowl, December 19th, Marshall versus UTSA. Marshall started 4-0, didn't get bowl eligible to the final game of the season. Nevertheless, Frank Harris's swan song, I'm assuming UTSA motivated to send Frank Harris out on a high note. So I like UTSA there. Georgia Tech, UCF in the Gasparilla Bowl. Georgia Tech squarely pushed Georgia to the limit. Really, like, decently good on offense and very, very bad on defense. UCF not good on defense either. Two teams that play very fast. This is a game that just screams over to me. The Armed Forces Bowl. We talk about vibes going in different directions. Air Force thought they might have a shot at a New Year's Six Bowl, got steamrolled by Army and then lost their last 4. And then James Madison did all their bitching and moaning and then still ended up getting into a bowl game. Guaranteed Rate Bowl, December 26th. This is just an immaculate vibes bowl game for me, Matt. Kansas and UNLV. Every time Kansas makes a bowl game, it's awesome. UNLV, their best season in forever. Let's rock and roll. The Duke's Mayo Bowl, North Carolina versus West Virginia. This is one I will bet depending on the status of the quarterback. I need to know what's going to happen with Drake May because there's two things here. One, I don't think it makes any sense for Drake May to play in this game. If he does, awesome. I don't think it makes any sense for him too. And I really, really don't think Mac Brown wants to get mayonnaise dumped on his head.
I want to see Mac Brown get mayonnaise dumped on his head
but I don't think
bad.
They played in this game 2 years ago and got blown out.
I know they got blown out. When they had Sam Howell, I bet on North Carolina.
Yeah, and they got blown out. Neil Brown strikes me as the kind of guy who will do anything to keep his job. So the Holiday Bowl is Louisville versus USC. I want to see
Mac get dumped on so bad.
Oh, I want to see it. I just don't think he wants to see it. I think he's going to tank that game. The Holiday Bowl, Louisville versus USC, December 27th. I wrote vibes, USC, extreme fart noise. The Texas Bowl, which is Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, December 27th. Does Oklahoma State care about this game? A&M, a lot of changes. That game's probably going to be really stinky. Fenway Bowl. You won the AAC and got left out of the New Year's Six SMU. Enjoy Boston in late December. The Pinstripe Bowl, December 28th, Rutgers versus Miami. Rutgers in a bowl game close to home. Pretty good deal for them. Miami playing in a bowl game close to home for so many of their alumni. There are a lot of New Yorkers go to Miami. I don't think they care. This is actually one game that I'm interested in betting. I'm going to kind of watch the market for this, which is the Pop-Tarts Bowl, December 28th, NC State, Kansas State. I'm
so mad Notre Dame didn't get into the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I wanted to see Marcus Freeman or somebody eat the Pop-Tart mascot.
Did you see what Dave Doran said?
I saw he said something. I didn't read the full quote.
He said, well, can we do a Pop-Tart and bourbon pairing, which I'm all for. More importantly, though, I don't know if you remember 2 years ago, he threw the
sounds like a great idea for a dessert, Pop-Tarts and bourbon.
Pop-Tart, just like bourbon glazed Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, oh my God. Pop-Tarts, if you're listening.
Yeah, we got you. I love that idea. Let's rock and roll.
Brown sugar bourbon.
Dave Doran threw a hissy fit 2 years ago when their bowl game was canceled because he wanted to win 10 games. They've only won 10 games, I think, once before. Now they'll get the opportunity to win their 10th game, barring something insane. I think it really, really, really matters to them. And Kansas State missed out on the conference championship. I don't think it's in their DNA to no-show, but nevertheless, all of their quarterbacks opted out because they're all in on Avery Johnson, the freshman who'll be starting his first game against a pretty good defense. Really like NC State in this spot. Brian says brown sugar Pop-Tart with bourbon. Absolutely. The OG of the best of the Pop-Tarts. Get unfrosted straw. I have nightmares about unfrosted strawberry Pop-Tarts. I can tell that story if you want at some point. The Alamo Bowl, December 28th, Oklahoma, Arizona. I will just caution you.
I love the Alamo Bowl, by the way. That always seems like it's one of the most fun bowl games here, no matter who's in it.
Usually points. Arizona, the vibes capital of college football right now. Top 15 team. Jed Fish, Noah Fafita, Tetairoa McMillan. Absolutely hyped.
Going to responsibly hammer Arizona in that game.
I will. Well, here's why I put this on the list, because I will say last year I made the mistake of fading Oklahoma in the middle of at the end of a really bad season against, remember, Florida State had all the hype. And it was like, Florida State's going to steamroll them and they're going to build their hype for next year. Oklahoma was really squirrely in whatever game that was. I don't think it's in their DNA, again, like Kansas State. I think Venables will have them up. We'll get to see Jackson Arnold get his first real start for them as the Jackson Arnold, who was a top 10 recruit in the country a couple years ago, 5-star quarterback. He gets his opportunity. Matt, does Notre Dame care about the Sun Bowl? Is Sam Hartman going to play?
Sam Hartman's not going to play. I do think they will care about it. They're going to have some opt-outs, but I think I think there's going to be some chances for guys on offense, especially with the receivers in the transfer portal. I think they're going to care. They're just going to have decent amount of opt-outs. But Oregon State also has quite a few opt-outs as well. I think their third-string quarterback is under center.
Yeah. I'm not really feeling an Oregon State team that lost their head coach and both quarterbacks. That's kind of dicey. The Cotton Bowl, Ohio State, Missouri. Will Ohio State care? Kyle McCord in the portal, Julius Fleming in the portal. No way Marvin Harrison Jr. plays. Emeka Egbuka shouldn't play. We'll see a ton of opt-outs. Are they going to take this seriously? Remember, they had a lot of opt-outs before the Rose Bowl against Utah 2 years ago and still played awesome. There's still a lot of talent there, but I don't know who.
What would you have thought if I would have told you that Ohio State and Missouri were going to play in a bowl game and Missouri was favored when we did this show?
I would have said that Marvin Harrison Jr. missed the entire season and Kyle McCord sucked, and we got
Missouri's a 1.5 point favorite.
dude, Eli Drinkwitz is in his fucking bag right now, man.
Oh, I think the Connor Stallions thing was hilarious.
The Connor Stallions thing was really funny. And then I only saw this because like I know a guy who works for 24/7. He was on the 24/7 transfer portal show and was like winking at a player who was in the transfer portal who wanted to come to Missouri because obviously he can't talk about it.
Yeah,
but he was basically like trying to say without saying he wanted this player in the transfer portal in his bag.
Good on him. Have fun.
I did some research. I don't think they've been in a real bowl in like a bowl game of this magnitude since like the 1960s. They played in the Cotton Bowl a few times in the past, but I think it was right before that bowl game. Lewis Hinton, who's an Alabama fan, says, so if the SEC don't win, we don't care, but that doesn't work for everybody else. Okay, no, that's exactly how it works. Listen to SEC fans. They will tell you that. And then the last one, Matt, the Fiesta Bowl, January 1st, Oregon versus Liberty. Liberty got the group of five, New Year's Six bowl slot because in the words of the committee, they just kept winning, Matt, which of course, hey, sucks to suck Florida State, but we'll put Liberty in there. Awesome. I love Jamie Chadwell. Vibes immaculate. There's one problem though, Matt, for them in this game. It appears as if, as of now, unless something changes, Bo Nix is going to play in the Fiesta Bowl. And if Bo Nix plays in the Fiesta Bowl, there is not a number you can put on this that I don't think I would bet. It was like 16.5 the last I saw. I would probably bet if you could give me an alt like up to like 28, I'm curious what number I could get. Because if Oregon is actually interested in Oregon cares and Bo Nix plays, they are going to beat 7 shades of shit out of this Liberty team.
It's like the Billy Madison gif where he catches the dodgeball and he's like, now you're all in big trouble. Liberty thought they weren't getting Bo Nix. Now Bo Nix is back. Now you're all in big, big trouble.
I'm going to try to. So those are the ones that I had. Are there any other ones? I went through a lot of them.
You did cover a lot of them. I'm going to do another quick scroll. Let's see. I had one here. Early on, New Mexico State, Fresno State. I just want to watch New Mexico State. I love watching New Mexico State.
Again,
I love watching Jerry Kill.
I love
Jerry Kill's going to show up in the what's it, Poncho? Diego Pavia has been unbelievable this year. He's going to be so much fun. Let's see, where am I scrolling? You covered a lot of these games.
Another thing on that game real quick. Fresno State, Jeff Tedford stepping away due to some health concerns, not permanently, but I don't think he's coaching this bowl game. Very weird situation going on there at Fresno State right now. Although the talent level should be pretty wide in their favor. One more chance to watch my guy Diego Pavia if he's healthy. I know he got hurt in the conference championship game. I'm trying to see if there are any alts yet for Oregon. Down to 16 at DraftKings. Man, that's like a fucking hammer spot, dude. Game props. Oh, we only have correct score. Game lines. Yeah, nothing yet. Anyway.
What else? Honestly, Utah Northwestern. I'm excited for Northwestern that they made a bowl game. I don't think that's going to be a good big game by any means.
That game's going to be awful.
It'll probably be pretty ugly. But in terms of like Northwestern's going to be having everything to play for. They're going to get up for that. Utah's, you want to talk about teams that probably don't lay down for bowl games, that don't. It's not in their DNA to lay down. That's going to be a fun matchup. Honestly, Dan, I think after that, I think you kind of covered them all for me. I'm literally excited in every bowl game. Like, I want to watch every one of them.
Yeah, and I mean, look, man, like I won't, because there's a bunch of games on. There's a bunch of games next Saturday, and I'm not going to be home next weekend. I'm going to be in New York on Saturday, not this coming Saturday, next Saturday. So I'm going to miss Army Navy. 2, I don't care. I'm not one of those people who, like, I've been to Army Navy. The pageantry before the game is awesome. The pageantry is incredible. I just did. If it's not snowing, I don't generally find that game to be super compelling most of the time.
I mean, I prefer it when it's snowing, but I still love it. It's not the
I'll
best
tune in if
football
it's
game,
close late, but like
I'm always compelled. I think part of me too is knowing like it's over. Like, this is it. Yeah. This is the last Saturday, and I need to soak all of this in. I know it's not the greatest football game, but I love it. I love the uniforms. I love the pageantry. Hopefully it does snow. I didn't check the forecast for, I think they're at Gillette Stadium this Sunday. Yeah, I haven't checked the forecast. I'm not gonna, because if it's snowing, I want it to be a nice little surprise for me.
It's not going to snow. Sorry to ruin it. I don't want you to get your hopes up.
What part of I want this to be a surprise for me? Don't you understand?
It's not even going to be close, man. It's going to be 48 degrees.
That's what they say now, but you don't like the weather in the Northeast in the winter. Just wait 5 minutes.
I hope it's not. The weather's not nasty. I got to go on some like fucking trolley ride thing on Saturday, and then it's my wife's company's holiday party. So,
well, Dan, now Now you make me feel bad that I wanted to snow in the Northeast on Saturday.
Lewis
Yes, it did.
Lewis Hinton and I disagree on a lot of things as him as an Alabama fan. I think we agree completely on this one, my friend. The football season went way too fast. It's already over. I mean,
Hey,
obviously we'll enjoy
cherish bowl season, because this starting whenever it is next, with the 18th,
Saturday,
I think it is, whenever the hell it is. There's nothing better than like that 2.5 week stretch where there is just a bowl game you can't not find a bowl game on TV. You sit on the couch on Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. You got a bowl game kicking off in a half hour. It's just the best. So it's a great time of the year, even though you know it's coming to an end.
Oh man, motherfucker, really? Sorry. I will say also we have 2 televised FCS games on ESPN. We have the Furman Montana game on Friday night. Montana 17.5 point favorite there. And then, like, if you were to ask me to pick like the 2 most random places to play each other in a college football FCS playoff game, Albany versus Idaho Saturday night is very strange. That's
gonna be a fun one.
Yeah.
Is it in the Kibby Dome?
That is in the Kibby Dome.
Hell yeah.
Idaho's a 4.5 point favorite. We have Montana, Furman. We have Villanova as a 20.5 point underdog at South Dakota State. I would probably lay the points there. North Dakota State, South Dakota. I think they played during the regular season. I think South Dakota beat them pretty handily, but obviously eliminating the Bison, a very difficult task. South Dakota State was like minus 280 to win the national title this week. So there's that. They're going to win the national title. So we just hope that it's compelling. I don't know if the D2 or D3 games are ever going to be on something we can watch until the championship games. Would love to be able to watch my beloved Mines, Colorado School of Mines play. But nevertheless,
D3 is not even worth watching. North Central is just going to roll through everybody.
Airport hangar known as the Kibby Dome. This is the first. Here's one for you. First time since 1994 that Whitewater or Mount Union are not in the quarterfinals or semifinals.
That's kind of wild. I mean,
which is
North Central. Yeah, that is wild.
North
Central's unfortunately just become Whitewater and Mount Union.
Exactly. North Central and South Dakota State are going to run through. Their respective levels. D2 is a little wide open, that because of like the weird geographical scheduling, one half of the bracket has a lot of kind of like surprise Cinderella teams, and the other one has Colorado School of Mines and Harding or whoever the number 1 seed ended up being. So that game should be pretty good. I'd love to watch it. Probably can't. It's probably behind some stupid paywall and something.
I think I've adopted Idaho as my team. I want to see them win it all.
Jason Eck and the Vandals. I have 2
I just love the Kibby Dome. I love that the goalposts hang from the ceiling instead of having the base. Like there's something romantic about the Kibby Dome.
The Kibby Dome's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Bucket list item. Bucket list college football spot.
Montana. So funny story real quick before we go. My buddy is going to Belize this weekend for a wedding. He lives in Austin, and he ran into Lowell Galindo, who is an anchor and talent at Longhorn Network, who is, I'm assuming, calling the Montana game this weekend. And so he said, I ran into Lowell at the airport today. He's going to Montana. I was like, why? And I was asked my friend, I was wanting to be like, why are you going to Montana? Before I realized that he was talking about Lowell Galindo. So nevertheless, I'm jealous of anybody who gets to go to Missoula. Also not going to be a snow game though, sadly.
We need more snow games.
We need more snow football. Give me some snow for maybe the semifinals, maybe next week. Montana and South Dakota State would play next week, which would be awesome. That would be outdoors. Like South Dakota State and Montana, I'm assuming are both going to win, at which case both would host, both play outdoors. Hopefully we get that. We'll see.
I feel like if we get both of those teams hosting a game, there's a pretty decent chance that in mid to late December we'll get one of them snowing.
I hope so, but we'll find out. Nevertheless, we appreciate you guys for tuning in always. I'm going to call this the season finale. I will leave it to Matt to carry on the legacy of the Blogger Bowl from here. But I'm not going to want to do a show next week because I don't think we kind of touched on everything we needed to touch on, and I'm not going to dive super deep into these games, and I won't be around for the playoffs. So we appreciate everyone who has tuned in throughout the course of the season. We really, really appreciate it. For everyone who has kind of rolled with us, the small group of guys who joined the chat, Brian and Mickey and all of the other guys who have been part of it, we appreciate it. We hope you all have a successful bowl season. We hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. And enjoy your New Year. Happy New Year. Hook 'em horns. Go Irish. There it is. Once again, on that note, we're out.